their education update. We get them every week on a Wednesday. Thank you, Superintendent Jon Fernandez, for jumping on.
Good
Hey, thank you,
morning.
Chris, and good morning, you and Bree and the team over there. You're absolutely right. And I'm just listening to the show earlier, and again, just over the last week, as we've seen the fatality numbers go up, it's been very, like you said, I think the word was sobering. And I've always, I guess cautioned, our team is that we're such a small island, and GDOE in particular is such a large agency that it doesn't take long, within the community to have these positive cases start to impact our own, employees, which we've seen in terms of the positive cases. And then yesterday we were informed that one of the fatalities was actually one of our recently retired teachers, someone who I just met earlier this year. I mean, just recall just meeting and talking to earlier this year at a retirement ceremony we had. And so, it doesn't take long for it to hit your families, your colleagues, your friends. So, we hate to share the news, but I've been, knowing, we got to know that it's, before too long, because of the size of the agency, you're going to soon have to report, this type of information, or confirm the information, or be impacted by the information. So we do pray for everybody who is being affected. Those who've been diagnosed positive, those who are in the hospital and ICU on ventilators, but everyone, also the families and friends of everybody who's affected. I think I also have been talking about the situation at GMH, so much wanting to help the front lines. But over the past week, we've had to send, approximately 16, 17 nurses from their school nurse roles, and make the assurance to them that they're going to have an opportunity to get orientations and trained, and be a part of, the non-COVID-19 teams before they get thrust into anything further on the front lines. But getting the news back that the GMH is struggling as well to address positive cases that may be going at the hospital, makes these decisions so tough. So I'm with you at just learning about the news over the past week and seeing those numbers rise. It's really important we get this under control.
Yeah.
All right, on to education. I mean, gosh, it kind of seems like an afterthought with everything that's going on, but the department's still educating kids in the midst of this PCOR 1 lockdown, John. So we'll just go status update generally, and then I know Bria has some questions.
Right. So I think, as you know, over the last week, we've been able to restart the hard copy distribution for our students on the hard copy model, and that's been, again, that's doing that in the midst of the anxiety levels rising. We're so thankful to teachers and staff who've been able to to go in, practice their safety measures, and then go ahead, restart the hard copy distribution, which we know is important to many students who are not online. In addition to that, maintaining the online learning model as well. That's been going on, has not been interrupted because of this, further shutdown. In fact, we've been doing a lot of parent meetings. We continued it, started last week, continued it last night, just to get input from parents as to how to improve, the scheduling of these online classes, how to improve their access to information, and so forth. So those have been going really well. During this pandemic situation, it's really the I guess the toughest issues are about the facilities and being able to return to facilities, because we did start not only the hard copy distribution, but there's been such a demand for food that we went ahead and started not only the commodities programs, which we're so thankful that the mayors are handling for the most part, but also Friday distribution of non-perishable breakfast items that we were able to get out to our students as well. So it's just a really tough balancing act between delivering distance learning, but knowing that you have to be at campus to also provide additional supports to those students who need that. So that's what we've been doing over the past week since we discussed it. And again, with the rising numbers, it doesn't mean that everyone's going in and feeling comfortable. We do have a lot of questions. a lot of concerns that we're hearing from our teachers and staff. We're working hand in hand with the Guam Federation of Teachers to get a handle on those questions and to try to provide responses and information. And we'll just continue to do so with the hopes that we will see this situation start to ease back towards towards more towards lower numbers, I guess.
Right.
So we're looking forward to that.
John, I wanted to ask, and I don't know if it's specific to an individual school, but students with special needs and picking up the hard copy, just hearing a lot of things from different parents of these students that there have been mix-ups in the packets that they're picking up. Can you address any of that? Is that a real issue?
Well, again, I think that's probably going to happen from school to school. I mean, this might be an issue for a particular school versus general. But last night when we spoke to our secondary parents from our central schools, we had good feedback and positive feedback from some of the schools in those areas. So I think it might just depend on the schools and the teams and those families. So what we do have on this Thursday, we do have a session dedicated only to families and parents of students with special needs, so we can kind of focus in on what that experience has been for them. I mean, we know that every student is going through this situation, every family, but for our students with special needs under our SPED program, we know that those impacts may be more, even more significant. And we wanted to make sure we dedicated time just to understanding, the supports and services and how they're playing out in this distance learning environment. So I just encourage any parents who have those questions or concerns, join us for our session on Thursday. It starts at 5:30 in the evening and it usually goes until about 7. And what I'll have our public information officer just repost the remaining sessions and times on our DOE Facebook page so that families can go there to get the Zoom link or watch it on Facebook Live if they'd like.
John, I noticed that there was a meeting yesterday. I believe it was the Guam Education Board. Believe it was about the budget. Is there anything you could share with us as to what was discussed?
Well, even in the midst of trying to get the school year started, we still have our responsibilities to address the budget. And at this point, we know that the legislature has passed a substitute bill, and that the governor is reviewing it and determining whether or not she will sign or veto it or allow it to lapse into law. And we've heard some of the concerns that have been expressed, from the front office. So we are waiting for a final determination on the budget and the governor's decision. But in the meantime, the board has to prepare itself as well. When the final budget is completed, the board then has to approve a spending plan for the department before the start of the fiscal year, so that we can align our budget along the lines of those priorities that the board is setting, which again, in line with the final budget numbers. Right now, we're looking at about a $14.5 million cut. That's a 7% reduction from last year. And it also represents over $30 million cut in our budget since FY 2018, which was the year when the federal tax cuts first impacted our local revenues. So the government, we've gone through a series of major reductions and cuts over the past couple of years. So digging deeper is going to be very tough. Now, of the 14.5, 2.5 of that is expected to be reimbursed to the department once our JFK lease or JFK bonds are refinanced. So, but at the end of the day, it's still going to be about $12 million that will be short this year compared to last year. So that'll impact us across the board. Of course, we're looking at where we can get additional savings. One of our board members recognized that if we don't go back to face-to-face, there may be opportunities for savings. But having said that, our goal is to return to face-to-face classes if we have the opportunity. So, we're just going to put us in a really strange situation of trying to manage the budget and deliver education services if we get to a point where we can go back to school in the traditional way. So those are some of the discussions we had just to prepare the board for understanding the breadth and the scope of the cuts that were being made in the substitute bill that was passed.
Wow. $12 million? $12 million.
Yeah, Yeah, this is on top of the $19 million that we've cut since 2018. And I think, as when we made those cuts, we were out in the community just to let the parents know that this is coming down the line and try to forego, expenditures that we could live without. But when you cut on top of that, now, you're talking about how do we make sure that we don't, to see if we can avoid impacting the livelihoods of our employees.
Right.
You're looking at, what else you can do with utilities. And I think as a board member said, if we're not at the schools, yeah, of course we'll see some utility savings and that'll help. But at the same time, you don't want that to drive your decision about whether or not to return to school when the time comes, things
John,
like that.
it's got to be a tough conversation with your oversight chair. Although she's on deployment, yeah, I'm still getting paid to be a senator. But what was that conversation like, if any? That hey, Leche Vice, $12 million.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, we dealt with her. We dealt with the appropriations chair as well with Joseph Augustine. I think the message to us is really across the board, everyone's taking a cut, and I think we understand that in this revenue situation, we understand that every agency is potentially going to see reduced expenditures. I think our board's point last night was, well, with education being a priority, shouldn't education have been the agency that, or that's along with public health and our public safety agency, shouldn't we have been shielded from some of these cuts? And I think those are the questions raised by the board last night. And I think number two is, if the governor is reconsidering a budget, and if she puts in place a process for the legislature to reconsider a budget, I think the board was really saying, okay, if that's the case, please give reconsideration to the Department of Education, to education as a whole, as a part of maybe a new compromise with the legislature.
Right, and
we can't ask for any of that surplus.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's already been utilized. I know because we're running into accumulated debt situation that has to also be addressed. So I've heard that discussion between the legislature and the governor. Right. For us, all we're trying to do is make sure that from this current year that we pay our bills, that we provide services to our kids, and then to know that next year, the year following, we're going to have further reductions. It's really going to make us go back to the drawing board and figure out where else can we cut and squeeze at the same time that we're trying to make sure that our kids are safe and we can deliver educational services during this pandemic.
Right. That's, but if we have a surplus, in this pandemic, who hasn't not paid the loan, not paid the car so they could put food on the table? We're all struggling with these tough decisions. And we heard about public health, and it was a case of first cut is the deepest, with the lead agency in this pandemic getting gutted. Now we're finding out the second cut even deeper. To education.
Right. So I think, what we're waiting for is to, the board really is going to come back in maybe a week and a half to go further into some of the budget options. We're waiting for the governor to take action, make a determination, and then see where we end up. But before October, the board is really going to have to sit down and outline areas that need to be cut, need to be maintained. We're going to provide them options as much as we can. But last time we looked, unless we're shut down for the school for the full year, last time we looked, we're getting deep into the bone now, with the cuts that we have to make. So, again, in a week and a half, hopefully we'll get more information and the board will be able to sit down and start talking about, where those cuts will take place.
Well, yeah, it's serious when you're one of the options, and one of the things you're talking about is like, let's cut face to face. That's bad.
I almost feel like you should just throw this budget back at the senators, back at Adelup, and just be like, here, you tell us how to work with this bull crap. Show us a way, because we don't see one.
Absolutely, Sabrina, one of the board members, said, so what happens if we don't go back to school? And I said, well, we will run that scenario in terms of a budget. What will happen if there's no face-to-face? But again, you don't want to have to drive that decision by, your budget. You want to drive that decision based on whether it's safe to come back to school, and you want your kids back with their teachers and so forth. So, that's going to be a tough discussion that we're going to have in a few days, within the next couple of weeks.
Any more
Yeah,
bad news,
good
Guam?
luck with that.
You got any good news,
Yeah.
John?
Yeah,
Any
you
good
got
news?
any
Yeah.
good news?
Shining stars in the
Well,
department?
again, I think a lot of questions we've got, whether we've received, is about the online, distribution. So we do want to let the parents know it is coming. Beginning next week, we will start with the application process and hopefully the distribution process to those families, the secondary school students. We're going to start at the secondary level, and we are going to be focusing on trying to move some of those hard copy students into online. So right now it'll be equipment. We're working with the governor's office and our own funding to try to do some expansion of internet access as well. And but that'll be the starting point. Next week we'll start that process with the outreach to families and get that going. So for those who are trying to manage in this hard copy environment, we hope that it'll change for some of our families who are able to take advantage of the laptops and equipment going out. And again, start from there and keep growing that program, which I do think will bring benefits to the school system
Right.
once we get familiar with further familiar with the online program. So
Right.
we're looking forward to starting that as we get into next week.
Just an update on the commodities and the grab and go meals.
Yep, commodities are going through the mayor's offices, so please, we encourage you to call your mayor. They've been very gracious in saying, look, let's take the commodities and we'll handle the door-to-door distribution to our Manamco, our disabled, and then also to doing drive-through operations for their residents. So please have residents call their mayors directly, and those mayors are working with us so that they can spread the commodities throughout the island, make sure that they go to those who are in need. On the school breakfast program, the school lunch and breakfast program, we are again doing Fridays at every school, distributing non-perishable items so the kids and the families can take home. So all you need, you will need an ID and to have the name of your student, at that school, so they can check in that student off the roster. But then pick up the bag of commodities and the bag of the non-perishable food items, and they'll have that for the week.
All right.
So that started last week and should continue for the foreseeable future.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, John.
I just wanted to
All
say
right.
though, you got the Guam Education Board. That is a huge election. I didn't realize it was going to be this big. It's only
Wow.
6 seats that are up for grabs. And you got 10 people running.
Wow.
Dr. Mary Okada.
Huh? The president of GCC? That's an
Yeah,
interesting-
Dr. Mary, and she was also wasn't she part of the transition committee for?
Yeah. John, you know what it looks like to me is it looks like the Adelup is trying to stuff all their people into
Robert
the board of education because
Crisostomo, Alexander Duenas, Peter Alexis Ada. He used to be on the board.
right.
And Salvador Avila. He's a familiar name.
Mm-hmm.
Was he ever on the board before, John?
Yeah.
He was on the board before? Or
No,
he
I
ran?
don't believe he was on the board before, but we do. I think last election there were four candidates running for 6 seats, and this election there are 10 candidates. So we're doing things. I'd rather doing things really poorly or really well.
Yeah, that was to me
What a good sport.
Dr. Mary Okada. So that's interesting.
That's a little, that's interesting.
Then you've
Yeah.
got the
Mary's
incumbents,
very
Mark
good,
Manjola,
yeah. So-
Maria Gutierrez, Lawrence Cairo. And
I just
and
got to
Luga
say that
Venti.
I appreciate the board chair, Maria Gutierrez. I think it's clear that, she stands for the department, stands for the kids, even if that means standing against the administration. There it is.
And I'm just because I know Mark. He really does care about the Guam Department of Education.
Right.
So, what an election that's going to be.
Ooh, feisty. John, thank you. I know you want to say something, but don't, okay? You might get
Appreciate it.
another
Thank you.
$12 million cut. Thank you, John.
Take care, John.
Absolutely. Have a great morning.
That's
Be safe.
okay. Wash your hands. 8:58. Let's just keep it in the KUAM News Zoom room and flip on over from the public schools to the private school side where we have joining us. And hey, I'd love to get other private schools on.
Yeah, we should probably get like St. John's. I know
St. John's.
Your mom's teacher there. We can
Right.
get them on.
Okay. So we don't have to get them on. We could if you want, but we